Good afternoon. Well, it's the afternoon now as I'm recording this. It is Friday, May 4th, 2012. So good whatever time that you're watching this. My name is FX, real quick, activist, researcher, videographer out of Chicago, and I wanted to do a really quick video on my thoughts, my personal thoughts about my mentor, Steve Coakley, who passed away on April 11th, 411. The significance of 411 being that's information, and that's what Steve Coakley was all about, information. But for those who do not know, Steve Coakley was a researcher activist out of Chicago. He was instrumental in the campaign for Harold Washington's mayoralship in Chicago. He was a part of Mayor Washington's staff. He was a part of Mary Jean Sawyer's staff. But as a researcher extraordinaire, Steve Coakley was very adept, an incredibly informed brother who brought information to African people, to black people, that was not available to black people. A lot of the information that Steve Coakley brought, he taught us how to research it, what to research for, and how to do the analysis in relation to the tools that you use your research for. He was my mentor. He was a lot of people's mentors. This is a very personal situation with me, a very personal issue with me. I knew him very well. We were, the last couple of times he came to Chicago that I knew of years ago, the last time I really saw him, I was the one who was assigned a task to be his chauffeur to drive him around the city. When I heard that he passed, the last time I talked to him was on the phone a couple of years ago, and he had been making his appearance on a local radio station in Chicago, 1570 AM, the Booty Butt Naked Truth, with Harold Davis, Boise Edwards, and Reverend Al Sampson. When I learned of his passing, I just woke up one morning, I got a text message, and it just said plainly, I can't even remember where it was from. The text message said plainly, Steve Coakley is dead. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I went through my process, I cried for that brother. A whole lot of memories came flooding back, and it kind of forced me, like Steve Coakley does, it forced me, as with a lot of other people, to look at my own position, my own activism, and what I'm doing in my life in this world right now. And that type of reflection Steve Coakley inspired in all of us. Tomorrow is Steve Coakley's memorial. It was on May 5th at Reverend Al Sampson's Church, United Methodist, Fernwood United Methodist Church. Sorry, Reverend. And I don't know how they're setting up the program. I don't know if the masses are going to have anything to say. I don't know if I'm going to be able to say anything. So I wanted to get some things out now into the public, to those who know him, those who may not have known Steve Coakley, so that just in case I'm not able to say anything, I can get it out now. The main characteristics about Steve was his dedication to the movement, dedication and his passion towards getting information, getting it right from the source, and then getting that information out to the people. A lot of the issues that we see now, especially on the underground level, on the grassroots level, that we pontificate on now, that we talk about now, that things are out in the open now, Steve brought it out before. If you are talking about the boule, the black boule, that was Steve's research. He found them and blew that up. A lot of the things that we read about, things that we talk about and that we read about in regards to the New World Order, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, all that, Rhodes Scholarship, and the Scramble for Africa with Cecil Rhodes. A lot of that research was put out initially by Steve Coakley, a lot of it. Steve wasn't the only one, but he was one of, if not the main one, that put out that information. The whole issue of the Freemasonry, if you're talking about Freemasonry now and the secret handshakes and symbols that originated in the black community. It originated with Steve Coakley. He brought that information, read it from the source, and filtered it right back to us. Not even filtered it, but just presented it to us. All this information, whether you're talking about Harold Washington's death, he made the contention that Harold Washington was actually assassinated. And that's one of the things that drove him out of Chicago. It's one of the reasons why he left Chicago, because the politicians in Chicago are incredibly hypocritical, like most politicians, like just about all politicians. But Chicago has some special shit, has a special brand of corruption that would really drive the average person crazy, you know. Steve also brought up the information regarding Martin Luther King's assassination and who within Martin Luther King's inner circle may have been involved with the assassination. He brought that out through his research, as well as others, but he brought that out and really he brought all those issues to a forefront, those issues and many more. I first met Steve in, oh God, I don't even remember, 1989. I was a student at the campus, on the campus of Western Illinois University, and Steve was doing a lecture tour. He went on lecture tours after he left the mayor's office in Chicago, after he left Eugene Sawyer's administration. The name of his lecture was, "Will There Be Any Niggas in the Year 2000?" And despite the fact that I have issues with that word nigga, still, the whole lecture centered on black people's presence, an analysis of black people's presence by the turn of the millennium, Gregorian calendar. I went into that lecture with one mind, came out totally different. 2-3 hours later, that 2 or 3 hour time that Steve Coakley, I sat in the front row as a young college student, totally blank on anything relating to African people. I was a Tom, I liked white women, it was nothing about me that remotely resembled anything of any profundity or consciousness, or higher consciousness. At the 2 or 3 hours in that lecture, Steve Coakley scared the shit out of me so much that after that I was changed. Flat out, I was changed. I was a different person, and that started my road on. So Steve was one of the very first people that initially woke me up to a lot of things. And for that, I'm eternally grateful for Steve. In our research circles, in our study groups, in our activism, in our street work. And a lot of the people that I work with, my crew, back in the day and now still, are all students of Steve Coakley. Steve Coakley, and I'm just going to pinpoint it to a few brothers that some people may understand. Steve Coakley, pretty much, his work and dedication inspired Randy Evans and Robert X, which in turn, all three of them inspired brothers like me, Marcus Klein, and several other brothers and sisters. Their sisters was there too. And that in turn gave, in Chicago, we did our thing in Chicago. See, Steve inspired other people in other cities as well. I'm sure he inspired, there was a group of people he inspired in New York. There's a group of people he inspired in LA, Atlanta, Houston, wherever. Because I remember Steve saying that he's gone to all these cities and there's a network in all these cities. And that's how it worked. Steve built a network wherever he went, and wherever he lectured, he woke people up, and people went to work researching the information that Steve brought out and taking up activism that Steve promoted. He wasn't just about giving you the information and that's it. Go ahead and mentally and intellectually master it. He wasn't about that. He was talking about taking action with the information. Steve's lectures were peppered with giving out information and giving out possible solutions to situations that African people were confronted with. One of the people that he woke up was Marcus Klein. That's my brother. That's my soldier. That's my comrade. Him and his wife. This is one. Marcus Klein went in and took the information. What the information that Steve had, Marcus Klein took the information and founded Frontline Magazine. See these? And you all are very familiar with Frontline Magazine. Here's one of the earliest ones. Here's one of the first ones with information. And on the back is an article that I wrote on the Boule. Because when Marcus Klein woke up and started Frontline Magazine, I thought it was the most awesome thing in the world, and I jumped on it in it with him. He allowed me to write in his magazine. This is one of his first ones. You know it's really old because it's 50 cents. It was 50 cents. That was about the Skull and Bones. And you can see Steve's influence in all these. Steve brought out the Skull and Bones. He brought that information to us. So you can see Steve Coakley's influence. Here's another Frontline magazine, Black Devils Part 2, the Chicago Boule. This magazine pointed out and named the names. That's the thing that Steve was very adamant about. You can't just give a blanket they, them, the powers that be, generalized, almost anonymous description of the power elite. You have to name the names. And Steve Coakley was adamant about that, and we were too, and this is what this magazine was all about. Steve's work also influenced research in Frontline magazine for the what Steve called the NowIntelPro. See, we use a lot of outdated terms. It was COINTELPRO in the 60s and 70s, but now it's a different word. But Steve called it NowIntelPro. What is the spy system now? And Steve exposed the Chicago spy system, how foundations, how certain individuals were complicit in spying on the people in order to corral any anti-establishment thought and action. Frontline magazine put that in there. Urban riots and Operation Garden Pot, the military plan to handle domestic uprisings. And this is key right now. These are old magazines, but to show you how these magazines are key right now, this is from 1999. We were talking about the Boule. That information came out back then. This is either earlier than that. We're talking about Skull and Bones, which was prominent in the 2000 election. I mean the 2004 election between two Skull and Bones, Kerry and Bush. This one is prominent right now because as Chicago is getting ready to host the NATO summits, we just got information that the United States government, the city government, along with Milwaukee state government, are planning. Number one, the federal government is having urban warfare drills in Chicago. We see the black military helicopters with guys hanging out with guns flying throughout the city and downtown particularly, all in preparation for NATO, but they've always been doing that. They've been doing it a lot lately, but they've always been doing it. Every once in a while you see military helicopters scouring across the skies. But also that there's a plan, it was just leaked a little while ago, where the Red Cross was complicit in Chicago, along with Rahm Emanuel, of course, in evacuating the entire city of Chicago, or evacuating certain people out of Chicago in the wake of the NATO summit, in order to get these people out and put them in detention camps in Wisconsin near Milwaukee. That's now. Frontline magazine, with a lot of inspired information that Steve Coakley put that out years ago. The military plan to handle domestic uprisings. We're seeing that now in Chicago. Steve also encouraged black women to take a role in the front lines of the movement. Steve was not on this kick of black women staying in the kitchen and cooking and cleaning, whatever, at least not in the lectures that he put out. What he told us was sisters got to be in the front line as well. And Marcus Klein's queen, Ashaki, and a lot of other sisters with her, they put out a magazine chock full of hardcore information from a sister's perspective. It was called Black Fist. And it was a very revolutionary, very hard-edged, very controversial magazine. Here's one right now, Womb versus Womb, the search of the black goddess. Now everybody's on black goddess worship and the feminine divine. But back then, way back in 2001 and even before that, you know, our circle, our people were already kind of talking about that. You have another issue right here, the Mau Mau struggle, documenting the history of the Mau Mau struggle in Kenya, the bad seed, the big corporate, and the God complex, how corporations like Monsanto was developing frankenfoods and monster seeds and genetically modifying crap. I'm gonna put my thumb over this sister's face because this picture was shot a while ago. I don't know where she is right now in terms of anything. So there's a sister holding a gigantic rifle because they believe that African people must arm themselves, even the sisters. There's no backseat in this. So Black Fist was an incredibly important magazine. My brother Tony Hurd, and at the time, his queen, I don't even know if I should say her name. I'll just call her T. But that couple put out a magazine called Mosaic, again inspired by the information that Steve put out, inspired by Steve Coakley's passion to inform the people. In this issue, Terrorism and the New Global Crusade. This came out in, it doesn't say where it came out. Interviews with Busta Rhymes, Muda Baruka, Ideas in the Art of War. So Mosaic was another magazine that came out at that time. We had another brother, let me get this one right here. Another brother, Daryl Garrett, Damu Kamisi. He came out with a Sealy. Once again, another Steve Coakley inspired magazine, chock full of information. Daryl Garrett was right there with us. Some of the information: United Snakes and South African government create germs to kill blacks. I remember Steve Coakley talked about that at length, about how they designed drugs and medicines and germ warfare and biological warfare in South Africa and America. They partnered up to design these biological weaponized diseases. A Sealy magazine, tribute to Dr. John Henry Clark. Pharmaceutical companies are mining your DNA for scientific gold. Disaster strikes. This is a Sealy magazine. This is my brother Daryl Garrett. Way back in the day. These are from like 1998. In 1999, Making Crime Pay is America's inmate population being converted into a slave labor force for the New World Order. Early on, we had a brother, King Calvin. He put out a magazine called Worldwide Alternative News. Again, inspired by Steve Coakley and his work. It's a Black Holocaust in Latin America. Our occult heritage, Freemasonry. Again, going back, the Boule, Hidden Black Fraternity. I think I wrote this one. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I might have I think I might have wrote this one. I don't remember. But I wrote for all these magazines, and I'm always, here it is. Boule by FX. I don't know if you can see it there. Yeah, Boule by FX. Okay, I forgot I wrote that. But yeah, King Calvin was there. He inspired by Steve. He was right there with the lectures. We had a lot of brothers with us who were hip hop artists, and they would take a lot of Steve's information, read it, study it, research it on their own. They would put it into songs. My boy Kazi the Black and Mr. Diggs, when they came out with a CD years ago, the Dark Shark recordings, you know, one of his first CDs right here. Then my other brother, Armin Ra, Bin Laden and the CIAs. Yeah, brother Armin Ra was, he was tight with brother Ezekiel Zephyra, and both of them, Armin Ra and Kazi, incredibly talented rappers, and they're still doing their thing. I haven't been in that much contact with them. The crew's kind of spread out a little bit, but you know, again, Steve Coakley's influence right here. And then when it came to me, I wrote for Frontline Magazine, I wrote for Black Fist, I wrote for Sealy, Worldwide, Mosaic. I did articles for all of them. I used a lot of this music that I just saw, that I just presented to you, in a little TV show that I put together in Chicago called Shock of the Hour. I don't know if a lot of people remember, it's been off the air for a while. But Steve Coakley's, again, influence and his instruction as a big brother to me, as a mentor to me, along with other brothers, because I had other mentors too. One of my other mentors was Nahaz Rogers. A lot of people don't know that it was Nahaz Rogers that gave me the blessing to do Shock of the Hour. I brought the idea to him. He's an elder, long-time activist, black nationalist, Garveyite in Chicago. And him and Brother Marshall, both of them are passed on now. Brother Marshall passed on a few years ago. Brother Nahaz passed on a long time ago, way back in the late 90s, I believe. I sat down at Edna's, I think, or one of the black-owned soul food joints, and I brought up, it was me, Brother Marshall, and Nahaz, and I brought up the idea, hey, you know, Nahaz, I got this idea, I want to do a TV show where I bring in speakers from different points of view, all from an African-centered perspective. We talk about things, we put out information, and I'm going to do this show, it's going to be an hour long, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? How should I do it? Blah, blah, blah. And he just gave me the green light. He said, brother, I think that's an excellent idea. I think you should do it, blah, blah, blah. We talked about that for a while, and that gave me so much inspiration that the information I'm getting from Steve, and he's demanding that, you know, y'all got to push this out there. I can't do this all on my own. Y'all got to push this information out there too. I'm still going to do it, but Steve said, you all do it too. You all have to push this information out there. So I'm getting this information from this inspiration from Steve. Then my other elder, he's like, yes, go for it, go for it. And I put out Shock of the Hour. Hit television. I don't remember the first year it was on television, 98, 99. I think it was like 98 or something like that. That was the first season. That show that I put together ran for a couple of years. I did 2 seasons and a series called FTW, Shock of the Hour FTW, which was specifically about the September 11th attacks and the War on Terror. Just those episodes were specifically about those. That just gives you an example of the scope in which Steve had an impact on all of our lives as a brother, as a teacher, as a mentor. Like all humans, Steve, you know, obviously wasn't perfect. You know, a lot of times when we messed up, he got on us, and a lot of times just, you know, a lot of times people were like, you know how human beings are. I'm not feeling him right now. He's made me mad or whatever. But then we always came back, and it was always love. When Steve left the city for a long time, we were all missing it. Everybody would come to me asking, have you heard from Steve? Have you heard from Steve? And I would go to my sources, and I'd be like, hey, anything from Steve? Anything? People would tell me, yeah, Steve's fine. He's all right. He's doing this, that. And, you know, a lot of people missed Steve for a long time when he left Chicago. And then when we found out he was sick, I don't want to say it was expected, but I can understand it, because doing this type of work at the rate that you're going nonstop will burn you out. But Steve was not going to take burnout for an answer, at least from what I saw. Steve just kept going. He kept going. He was dedicated and passionate, and that is one of the biggest things that I can take from that brother. But like I said earlier, I want to connect something earlier about Steve, is that Steve inspired us to do what we did. You know, Randy Evans, Robert X, Marcus Klein, me, Michelle Joyner, Tanya Ward, Tony Hurd, Damu, a whole bunch of us, Brother Sax Preacher, Brother Ezekiel Zephyra, a whole bunch of us, even Little Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., Mama Akua. We all knew and loved Steve, and it was a whole bunch of others. Of course, Harold Davis, Brother, you know, Al Sampson. He inspired us. We put the information out. But it's interesting, what has happened now is, and I'm going to say this and wrap it up because I got to go. What has happened now is that the information that Steve's put out, like I said before, the whole idea of Boule, the researching fraternities and sororities and the Masonry, researching the New World Order, that sort of thing, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, all of that, other people were inspired to research it. They did their research. Other people were inspired to research it. They did the research, and it went on and on and on to a point where that information has almost, in many ways, depending on who's doing the speaking or whose perspective is coming from, it has de-evolved. I hope I said that right. But it has devolved into what you see on YouTube right now. And I have to say this because it irks the crap out of me. If you are on YouTube right now, if you see somebody on YouTube right now, or if you're one of those people who are putting this information out, when you talk about Freemasonry in the black community, within the quote-unquote conscious community, the so-called conspiracy theorists, which is a stupid-ass term I don't like, if you're talking about the Illuminati, if you're talking about the Boule, if you're talking about all that, and you see these videos, all that information, Steve Coakley, he originated that information. He originated the search and the research for that information. He was the first one to put that out there. But at the same time, what you see out here now, especially what you see on YouTube now in the minds of a lot of people now regarding to this Illuminati, hand signal, what rappers are part of the Illuminati and the gay boule thing, that is not Steve Coakley's research. That's not. That is a bastardized version of Steve Coakley's. That's not even a version. That's just bastardized information. One of my cousin, he's an upcoming rapper in Chicago named Point Blank. We were at a family gathering, and he asked me, yo, cuz, what do you think about this Illuminati thing? You know, he wants to get into the music industry, and that's what everybody's looking at now, doing that type of research. And I told him point blank, it's bad research. It's very bad research. I can't even really call it research. There is no organization of white men or people, period, sitting off in some dark room somewhere in some ivory tower with paper with headings called the Illuminati. There's no organization called the Illuminati. The Illuminati, Steve came up with information. He found information that stated that the people who rule the world are not called the Illuminati. So a lot of people, when they did this research, and Steve said this on 1570, a couple of weeks before he died, a while ago, he said this on the radio in Chicago. Now he has a lot of people coming to him or sending him information or calling him or whatever, showing him information about the Illuminati and, you know, all this other stuff and hand signals and the gay bully and all that stuff. But he said that I don't use the term Illuminati. This is the dude talking that originated all that research. He's telling people, I don't use the term Illuminati. I name the names. You have to name the names. It's not good enough to just say the Illuminati. The term Illuminati, number one, not only is it not an organization, because that organization, as an organization, went out in the 1800s, years ago in fucking Europe somewhere. After that, there was no more Illuminati. The term Illuminati became a nickname that researchers gave those elite planners, those world elite planners. It's just a nickname that researchers gave them. So just like Boule is a nickname that some researchers gave some Negroes in Hollywood and in the music industry, but they're not Boule. Unless you see their name on a list, you can't call them Boule. There is no organization called the Illuminati. It was a nickname given by a bunch of researchers. That was lazy enough. But Steve understood that this thing that could be called the Illuminati was not to be called the Illuminati. He had the paperwork. There's a video on YouTube right now explaining that, where he goes through the document saying that this organization, which is the Round Table Group, came out of Europe. Rothschild involved, Rockefeller involved. It came out of Europe, is not to be called the Illuminati. The people who run the world are not called the Illuminati, but this whole Illuminati mess that you see on YouTube, complete with Baphomets and goats and all these stupid ass hand signals, is bad research. And to show you how the white boy, how the rulership, how the government or whatever, the elite, laugh at your ass when you call things the Illuminati and really think that you're doing something heavy. Dude, there's Illuminati card games. Do you see that? Illuminati card games. I have a book at home. Look at this. International Cocaine Smugglers. It's an Illuminati card game. Federal Reserve. It's a card game. Illuminati New World Order. You all are acting out a damn card game. Earth Magic. For all you mystical people. These cards came with a booklet, a big booklet. GURPS Illuminati. This is how dusty this shit is. GURPS Illuminati. And the board game, the card game. Here's the instruction manual, how to play the damn thing. This is how serious a white boy takes Illuminati. They're probably looking at you, laughing their ass off, thinking that you're onto something, and obviously, it is so passé in terms of the relevancy, in terms of its code. If you know what I'm talking about, that these codes are outdated and not used anymore. The organization is not called Illuminati. I got this. I stole this book from, we call it Liberate. We liberated books back in the day and still do, but I stole this book. Wait, did I steal this book? I can't exactly remember. I don't know, how did I come across this book? Oh, no, I didn't steal this book. I tried to steal it from this bookstore years ago, way back in the 90s. I saw it. I recognized it from my lecture. I was like one of you all looking for, you know, anything that had Illuminati on it. I saw it and I thought this could be something. The white man's communicating to other white men using video games, using magazines and games and stuff like that. What is being communicated here? So I figured I had to steal the damn thing. That's one thing that Steve Coakley taught us, is to liberate information wherever you find it. No matter how you get it. If you got to pay for it, go ahead and pay for it. But if you got to liberate it, quote unquote, liberate that shit. So I tried to liberate this book from a bookstore. I'm not going to say what bookstore it is. And I didn't. I almost got caught. Obviously, I didn't. Yeah, I remember that. I was unsuccessful in liberating it. But it was like maybe in 1992, I think. It's probably when this is dated. Yeah, something like that. 1992, exactly. Copyright 1992. And I was like, I thought I failed my mission. So I went at my girlfriend at the time. I told her that what I tried to do, I tried to steal this book and I almost got caught. And she was like, what? Boy, here. She went and bought the book and just gave it to me. So she's like, what the fuck are you trying to steal stuff for and go to jail? She's like, boy, here. Thank God it's for black women. But anyway, also, you know, even past the games, beyond games, this idea of the Illuminati was broached upon by none other than, wait, let me show you, Marvel Comics. When they put out a series of comics called the Illuminati. What does that say? New Avengers, the Illuminati. The Illuminati are all the most powerful superheroes in Marvel Comics. Black Bolt of the Inhumans, all the leaders of the different factions of heroes in comic books. Black Bolt of the Inhumans, Professor Charles Xavier of the Mutants, Namor from Atlantis, Iron Man, Industrialist, be on there, Industrialist. Doctor Strange, he was the key guy to go to for mystical powers and mysticism and all that. And Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four because of his scientific prowess. That was the Illuminati. They did a story about that. Just another example of how the Illuminati turn in the eyes and from the perspective of Caucasian people, of the ruling elite or whatever, is a tongue-in-cheek joke that we, for whatever reasons, are taking seriously. I said all that to say this. It must be important to understand that a lot of the research that we're seeing now is, although it originated with Steve, is a bastardization of the information now. You're really just wasting time, really, and you're not at all effective in any way, shape, or form. Those of you who get freaked out at hand signals and the Illuminati and goats and 666s and all that stuff. Not only is it not factually, is it factually dubious, but the analysis is wrong too. Steve Coakley was all about bringing out information and bringing an analysis. His thing was the analysis of power and control, a circle within a circle, and all those sorts of arrangements of how the society is organized through owners and operators. That's what Steve's information legacy is. That's what he taught us. So the people, Marcus Klein, Tony Hurd, and all of us, when we look at some of these other quote-unquote researchers, at least me, I'll speak for me. When I look at them, it's amusing to me, really. And Steve, like I said, Steve himself said that you can't bring me no Illuminati. You have to name names. You have to name the organization. You have to name the owners and the operators. So unless you're doing that, you're not doing any research. You're not doing any analysis. I'm just letting you know right now. Because, like I said, not only is the information skewed, not only is the analysis dubious, but in terms of the mysticism and spiritual, the occult teachings and stuff like that, most of y'all don't even know what that means. Trust me, you don't. You don't even know what those signals mean or anything like that. And, beyond the fact of them being abstract symbolism, still, it's a distraction. That is some of the most important things that I wanted to get out about Steve. I'm going to miss that brother. I'm sure a lot of other people are going to miss him. The funeral tomorrow, the memorial tomorrow is going to be very interesting. I'll leave you with this. Do the research. Steve Coakley was always adamant to us, always pressed upon us to go to the source for your information. Don't get second and third hand things. Because that's what's wrong with our analysis now. We're not getting actual concrete source material information. And so I implore you, do your information, do your research, think, analyze, think rationally, and then devise a plan of action. Steve was always about that, plan of action. He always proposed actions that people can do in each city that he visited so that they can take up a cause or do something to bang against this system, to bang against this beast. Steve was an inspiration. I'm going to miss him. And anybody who is a student of Steve is a comrade of me.